Well, good morning again, everyone. Once upon a time, in a place far, far away, people used to get their television programming over the air from antennas. Any of you remember that? There was no cable TV or satellite TV, no pay-per-view or video on demand, and certainly no YouTube or live streaming. Just plain old, ordinary television that came in over the air. And as a result, there are only 3 networks and a couple of independent stations. And they all competed for us to watch their station. And the way they used to do it, if you remember, is they would put their best programming opposite each other to force you to make a decision as to which channel you were going to watch. Because, of course, you couldn't watch both stations at the same time. And that used to burn my father up. He couldn't stand that the best programming would always be opposite each other. And so he would have to watch one and miss the other, or at least wait a few months for the reruns to come out. Enter the VCR. Now, for our younger viewers, the VCR came out around the early 80s. If you remember, those of us who were around, they were pretty big instruments when they first came out. They had a pretty big console and these big bulky tapes. Remember, there was first the Betamax, and then that gave way to the VHS, right? And these tapes held at most 6 hours of programming. Nothing like the DVRs that we have today. Well, in 1981, my father decided he was going to buy a VCR. Now, you have to realize my father was not one on the latest gadgets of the day. I mean, it was well into the 70s before we even saw our first color television set. And color had come in during the 60s. My father was not much on extravagance. As a Depression child, he was a frugal man. And he didn't see any point in having more than what you needed. And so he had no patience for extravagance, and he wanted just what he needed. So it seemed a little odd that he was looking for a VCR when he had a particular suspicion of technology. He couldn't understand why we needed technology when we could do things on our own. He thought it was a catastrophe that I never learned how to use a slide rule. Does anybody even know what a slide rule is? I don't even want to talk to you about how he handled cell phones. So it seemed a little odd that he wanted to be one of the first kids on the block with a VCR. But you see, the other thing about my father was that he was a bit of a control freak. Not that anybody would know anyone like that. My father knew what he wanted, and he knew how to get it, and he usually got what he wanted. He had no time for surprises. Surprises, in his point of view, was simply the result of a lack of planning or preparation. That if you studied the issue hard enough and you focused on what you wanted, you could get it without any surprises, no more, no less. And you see, my father's need to control got the better of his need to be frugal when it came to this VCR. Because he was so frustrated with the network's planning of the best programming opposite each other, that he was going to end run them by getting a VCR and taping the program that he wanted to see while he watched the other one at the same time. And all would be right with the world because he would be back in control. So, this one Saturday morning, he decides to set off to the electronics store to buy himself a VCR. Now, the other thing you need to know about my father was that he was a conservative businessman. He had no time for frills, no time for small talk. He wanted to get right down to business. He would tell you what he wanted, and he expected that you would give him what you wanted. And if you ended up spending more than what you wanted, then you were either a fool or you were taken for a fool. So my father walks into this electronics shop, and the salesman approaches and asks if he can help him. And my father says, "Yes, I'm looking for a VCR. Nothing fancy, just a basic VCR so that I can tape one program while I'm watching another." And the salesman says, "Oh, got the perfect thing for you, sir. Right this way." So, of course, he takes them right over to where they keep the top of the line. And he says, "Sir, here's a VCR that's just for you." He says, "It can not only tape one program while you're watching another, but you can program it ahead of time so that you don't even have to be there, and it can tape the program for you. In fact, you can be away for up to 2 weeks, and this VCR will tape the programs that you want. In fact, this VCR is so sophisticated that you can even attach a camera to it and make your own home videos." Now, you have to remember that we're not talking the camcorders that people have today. You would have to take this VCR and strap it to your shoulder and plug in a camera that you rested on your shoulder so that you were looking like you were coming from Eyewitness News or something. So my father looks at this guy like he's crazy. And he says, I don't want that VCR. I just want to be able to tape one program while I'm watching another. Why would I even want to make a home video? Oh, sir, he says, you just never know. You're a grandfather. You got to take pictures of the kids. It'll be a big hit. You want this top-of-the-line VCR. And my father said, no, I don't. I'll take the basic VCR. And that's what my father wanted, and that's what my father got. So that afternoon, he arrives back home, and he sees that my sister and brother-in-law are visiting because their car is parked in the driveway. He goes into the house, and he takes his hat and coat off, puts his package down. He greets my sister and brother-in-law, and he just cannot wait to tell them the story of his venture. So he sits them down and he talks about how he just wanted this basic VCR, and this salesman tried to talk him into the top of the line, and it was so darn ridiculous, but he stuck to his guns because, you know, if you know what you want and you plan for it, you get what you want. And he was obviously very proud of himself. So my sister and brother-in-law listened to his story, and they nodded and they agreed with him. As we all learned, that's how you responded to my father's stories. And after he was done with his story and very proud of himself, my sister said, well, Dad, Mom, Chuck and I have news for you. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby in October. Well, that was just great news, and after all the hugging and the kissing and congratulations, my father walked right up to the telephone, called the electronics shop, and told the guy, I'll take the top of the line. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. And when he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it. Or even still, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sets out to buy a basic VCR. And upon learning that he is going to be a grandfather for the very first time, orders the top of the line. Amen.